Right before the medical school entrance exams, I secretly stole the recommendation letter that campus queen Clara had written for my childhood friend, Zach. Have you ever wished you could go back and change just one thing? One single moment that spun your whole life, and someone else's, completely off course? Because I got that wish. And what happened next, it wasn't what anyone expected. My name is Elena, and this story, it really begins with an end. In my first life, Zach and I died in a car crash. The air was thick with the smell of blood, metal twisted around us. And his dying words, rasped out right there in the wreckage, were meant for me. He told me, if he could do it over, he'd beg me not to ruin things with Clara again. He wanted me to just leave them alone. And then, somehow, his wish came true. I got a second chance. So, here I was, reborn. And this time I decided to grant his dying wish. I wouldn't interfere. I wouldn't touch Clara's letter of recommendation to Zach, the one that, in our past, I'd secretly taken, convinced I was helping him choose his future. I had thought I was protecting him, making sure he'd go to a top medical school. All I'd earned for it was a lifetime of his resentment. He'd hated me. Called me jealous, manipulative, toxic. Swore he'd never feel the same for someone like me. But that was then. This time I'd just let things happen. And happen they did. This time I didn't touch the letter. And sure enough, Zach and Clara were able to go to the same medical school. Well, almost. Zach deliberately failed the clinical skills portion of his entrance exam. Totally bombed it. When the results came out, his scores were just low enough to match Clara's. And just like that, they were officially a couple. At our graduation ceremony, his romantic gesture of sacrificing his academic future for love became legend. He was the king of romance. I sat in a dimly lit corner, nursing a glass of sparkling water, watching them. They were surrounded by our classmates, basking in the glow of their perfect love story. My best friend, Maya, sat beside me, completely bewildered. "Is he insane?" she whispered. "He threw away his future. For this? For some uncertain future with Clara?" Yep. This time around, he chose Clara over his future. In the last life, I had taken that letter. I truly believed I was helping him. I even returned it to him the night after the exams. But when he went to Clara with it, she'd rejected him. "Zach," she'd said, "our scores are way too different. We won't even be at the same medical school. How is this supposed to work for years of long distance? I need a boyfriend who's actually there, you know?" A devastated Zach came back, his eyes burning into mine. The next day, his parents frantically showed up at my door, saying he wanted to change his college applications. Begging me to talk him out of it. I wasn't surprised, but when I found Zach, before I could even speak, he sneered. "What, stealing the letter once wasn't enough? Elena, you have to ruin it again?" Standing in that stairwell, a breeze rustling through, it felt strangely cold despite the bright sunshine. He looked like a wreck. I just said, "Zach, you've been working towards this for 12 years. With his parents practically threatening to disown him, he backed down. He didn't change his application. He didn't get together with Clara. And from that day on, I became the villain who kept them apart. The target of his resentment, every time he thought about what could have been. Right up until the end. Trapped in the twisted metal of the car, the air thick with the smell of blood, he rasped, "If I could do it over, Elena, please don't interfere. Just leave us alone." So, reborn, I granted his wish. But I couldn't just do nothing. Not entirely. 3 weeks before the exams, I wrote him an anonymous letter. I slipped it under his door. It said, "Don't throw away your future for anyone, no matter how much you think you love them. A brilliant future is the only thing that will never leave you." I signed it with just 2 words, "A friend." I watched him read it from across the courtyard. He held the paper in his hands for a long time. Then he crumpled it. And threw it in the trash. He chose Clara anyway. He made his grand, irreversible gesture. By skipping those clinical skills questions, he scored over 100 points lower than before. He successfully closed the gap with Clara. They were together. Back at the graduation ceremony, someone brought me up, their voice laced with a kind of wistful wonder. I always thought Zach and Elena would end up together. Childhood sweethearts, both at the top of their class. Zach quickly shut it down, probably worried about Clara getting the wrong idea. His tone was distant. Just old friends, he said. Nothing more. I chuckled silently, repeating those words in my head. Just old friends. He wasn't wrong. We were childhood friends. Same class from kindergarten through high school graduation. Besides my parents, Zach was the person I spent the most time with. I saw him pull all-nighters to solve a single biology problem. He saw me battling a 104-degree fever just to take a test. No one knew better than us the sheer hard work behind those effortlessly high scores everyone admired. The day we both got into high school, ranked first and second in the city, Zach pointed to the photos of previous valedictorians on the bulletin board. 3 years, Elena, he'd said. That'll be us up there. Think you're up for it? The setting sun painted the sky in vibrant hues of orange and red. Cicadas buzzed in the humid air. I hugged my books and grinned. Zach, I replied, you're on. Back then, all we saw in each other was the excitement for the future, the hunger for our dreams, and the unwavering determination to achieve them. But soon, Clara entered the picture. In a high school where most of us were buried in books and perpetually sleep-deprived, Clara was effortlessly gorgeous. At the school's cultural festival, she stood on stage in a white dress, radiant as the moon, her ethereal glow dimming everything around her. That night, her name was on everyone's lips. She became everyone's dream girl, including Zach's. I first noticed something was off when he came back from delivering some test papers to Clara's class. His ears were flushed. He sat at his desk, staring at a blank page for straight study periods. On his scrap paper, covered in calculations, 3 words stood out, see Clara Miller. He'd scribbled them out repeatedly, but the ink bled through. Later, I heard what happened. Clara had accidentally bumped into him, briefly hugging him as she messed around with her friends. Zach, momentarily stunned, had just muttered, "Be careful." Clara had smiled, "Sorry, Mr. Smarty Pants." "Oh, and you're cute." The class erupted in teasing laughter. Zach, normally so composed and reserved, was flustered. Zach and I were similar. So rational, level-headed, calm as still water. Clara was emotional, vibrant. A fizzy tablet dropped into that placid water. A beautiful fizzy tablet. It was no surprise he was drawn to her. Like in all the rom-coms and novels, opposites attract. The popular kid and the nerd, the jock and the bookworm, the ice queen and the sunshine girl. I thought even if Zach was smitten, he'd still know what truly mattered. But he proved me wrong. For Clara, the always logical Zach rebelled. I wasn't privy to the details of how their relationship developed. I was too busy with my own studies to pay much attention to their increasingly frequent interactions. The most I talked to Zach about was homework, test answers, or how prepared we were for the next exam. By the time I realized how close they'd become, Clara was already comfortably calling him nerd and brainiac. And Zach's reactions showed he was used to it. I started noticing he'd disappear for half an hour every lunchtime to help Clara with her homework. Every Saturday morning, he'd suddenly have plans to attend little get-togethers Clara organized. I knew he was falling for her, but that didn't stop me from focusing on my own goals. I kept my head down and studied until the national biology competition in our junior year. The school held rigorous tryouts to select one student to represent us. Zach didn't show up for the final round. Clara had fainted and been rushed to the hospital. After taking her there, he stayed with her at her request, missing the entire afternoon. I don't know how to describe how I felt. I remember running to the hospital, finding him in the hallway, his expression blank. All my complex emotions poured out in a single confused question, "Zach?" He leaned against the wall, his voice flat. "I've played by the rules my whole life. I deserve to rebel once, don't I?" He'd given up months of preparation, forgotten all those nights he'd spent studying while sick. Looking at him, this smart, gentle boy, I felt a pang of something like grief. I didn't say anything. But I knew this wasn't a good sign. So, when his second big decision, a confession, loomed, I made the choice for him. I took the letter. I'd already accepted that Zach would probably confess to Clara after graduation and they'd get together. I was prepared to be happy for them. But I hadn't expected to overhear Clara talking about the letter. I'd gone back to the classroom to grab my notebook during a meeting for the top 100 students. The room was empty. Clara was standing by Zach's desk, talking to a friend. It boiled down to this: she'd started pursuing Zach on a dare to snag the valedictorian. But then she'd actually fallen for him. She was afraid their different academic paths would separate them. So, despite knowing he liked her, she kept pretending they were just friends. The letter was her way of hinting she wanted to go to the same medical school as him, a signal that she wanted to be with him. I'd always been certain Zach wouldn't throw away his future for anything or anyone. But in that moment, I wasn't so sure. To prevent that 1% chance, after they left, I took the letter. I questioned myself countless times, wondering if I'd done the right thing. Once, I tried to talk to him about it. "Zach," I said, "even if you had seen the letter, what would you have done? Would you really have?" He cut me off with a laugh, utterly convinced. "Elena," he'd said, "I would have." I stared at him, silent for a moment, then let out a small, sad laugh. I realized for the first time that I was wrong, terribly wrong. Back at this graduation ceremony, as it wound down, Clara took Zach's arm and walked over to me. She raised her glass, smiling brightly. "Elena," she said, "you've been a part of Zach's life for 18 years. Even if you're just friends, you're still special. So, you wish us well, right?" I looked at Zach beside her, a handsome young man in a black t-shirt, his eyes bright. I smiled politely, correcting her. "I haven't been a part of Zach's life for 18 years. We just happened to walk the same path for 18 years. From now on, our paths diverge. Plenty of people have already wished you happiness tonight. You don't need one more from me. I wish you." I paused, letting the words hang, then finished, "bright futures." I meant it. We all came from ordinary families. We'd slaved away to get this far. Who wasn't striving for a bright future? In my previous life, Zach went to a top medical school. He became the star pupil of a renowned professor, met influential mentors, and made countless like-minded friends. With access to the best resources, he thrived in his beloved field of medicine. His name appeared in academic journals. He presented at conferences. His future was brilliant. His only regret was Clara, the one that got away. At occasional class reunions, I'd hear snippets about her, see who she was dating, who she'd broken up with, which millionaire was showering her with gifts. The last I heard, she was getting married. That night, Zach got blackout drunk. He came banging on my door. My parents were out. He stumbled in, his voice thick with bitterness. "Elena," he slurred, "you must be so happy now, huh? She's getting married. Are you satisfied?" I stood by the sofa, letting him vent. When he was done, I poured him a glass of water. "Drink some water," I told him. He didn't take it. I was tired after all these years. I watched as his anger subsided, and he drifted off to sleep. I draped a blanket over him. Back in my room, I got a text from Maya, relaying some gossip she'd gleaned through her extensive network. Apparently, Clara's marrying some new money guy. He fell for her at a birthday party. She had a boyfriend at the time, but the guy started throwing money at her. Enough money to make her dump the boyfriend. I stared at the message, suddenly wondering what would have happened if Zach had given up everything for Clara. I never thought I'd get to see the other path play out. But then, I was given a do-over. And Zach finally got what he wanted. Watching them walk back into the crowd at graduation, their friends cheering them on as they kissed, I finished my juice and left. Zach always imagined that even if they'd gone to the same medical school, he'd still have achieved the same level of success. No one could know for sure, but Zach, I'll be watching. My second chance was similar, except for Zach's choices. I got into the same medical school as before, accepted into the pre-med program. I didn't see Zach all summer. He was on a graduation trip with Clara. I got a tutoring job teaching high school biology. Sometimes I'd run into Zach's parents. Their smiles were strained when they greeted me. And I noticed the streaks of gray in their hair. They'd never know why their gifted son, who had never ranked lower than third in his class, had suddenly bombed his exams. They worried about him, tried to cheer him up, encouraged him to go on a trip to clear his head. I didn't know whether it would be better for them to know the truth or not. But seeing them, I felt a pang of guilt. After my own parents, they were the people who'd been in my life the longest, who'd watched me grow up. For a long time, while my parents were working, I'd eat lunch at Zach's house. His mom always made my favorite sweet and sour pork ribs. She knew exactly what I liked. She'd tell Zach to look after me at school, make sure no one bullied me. Zach, holding a slice of watermelon, would say, with all the seriousness of a little adult, "Don't worry. I won't let anyone bully her." I was a quiet girl. Good grades, got along with everyone. It was Zach, with his introspective nature, so different from the other rowdy boys, who was often left out. But he didn't care. He had me. I thought we'd always walk the same path. I never thought he'd turn away. I saw Zach again at the train station the day I left for medical school. In a previous life, we'd been in the same city. Now I was heading north. He and Clara, south. The waiting room was crowded. They sat together, scrolling through some relationship advice video on their phones. He occasionally nodded in agreement with Clara's comments. He'd gotten a tan from their travels. His features seemed sharper, more defined. He had a small tattoo on his arm, Clara's initial C, and he was wearing a matching shirt with her. This Zach was becoming a stranger to the one in my memories. He caught my eye. Across the rows of seats, I met his gaze, offering a small smile as a greeting. He froze for a second, subconsciously shifting his tattooed arm behind his back. Clara said something to him, and he quickly looked away, his lips forming the words, "Nothing." My train was called. As I lined up and walked through the gate, I felt his gaze on my back. I knew it was him, but I didn't turn around. On the train, I found my seat and checked my phone. There was a message from Zach. Our last conversation had been months ago. For a moment, I felt a strange sense of dislocation. This would probably become the new normal until one ordinary day our last words to each other were spoken. I opened his message. It was short. "Elena, bright futures to you, too." My future would be bright. I was stepping onto a new platform, entering a wider world. I'd be surrounded by brilliant minds from all over the country. A whole new circle of talented, driven people. Here, hard work and talent were abundant. Humility and skill went hand in hand, away from the confines of high school. I'd realized Clara wasn't some otherworldly beauty. She was just one bright star amongst many, obscured by the self-doubt and insecurities of adolescence. Now, shedding those ill-fitting cloaks, we were all stepping into our own, each a shining pearl. I threw myself into my studies, collaborating with professors and classmates, competing in academic challenges. I volunteered as a teaching assistant, took up painting, and even created portraits of every stray cat and dog on campus, giving them each a name. Whenever I went home for breaks, I somehow managed to miss Zach. I spent holidays with my extended family. For years passed, and we never crossed paths. We met again at an academic conference. It wasn't a reunion. It was a regional medical symposium held at the convention center in the capital. I was there to present my research on immunology pathways. He was there as a vendor representative, setting up booths for a pharmaceutical supply company. When I walked into the main hall with my advisor, I didn't expect to see him. He was wearing a company polo shirt, holding a stack of promotional brochures. His face was thinner. His shoulders were slumped. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. He saw me, too. For a moment, he just stood there. Then he nodded, and I nodded back. No one approached anyone. We had both changed too much for easy greetings. My advisor asked me if I knew him. I said we went to high school together. That was all. That afternoon, I walked past his booth on my way to the coffee station. He was organizing a display of pamphlets. His hands were steady, but his eyes were distant. I stopped. Zach. He looked up. Elena. I waited for him to say something. He didn't. So, I said, are you enjoying the conference? He smiled a hollow smile. I don't understand most of it. The papers. The presentations. It's like a different language. I didn't know what to say to that. I told him I was presenting in the afternoon session if he wanted to come. He said he had to work the booth. That was the first time I realized the gap between us wasn't just time. It was a canyon. His mind had been brilliant once. Not just smart. Brilliant. The kind of brilliance that made teachers stop and stare. Now he was standing in a convention center, holding brochures about lab equipment he didn't design and couldn't explain. The boy I remembered was gone. Not dead. Just gone. I asked him if he was happy. He laughed. Not a bitter laugh. A tired one. I don't think about happy anymore, he said. I just think about getting through the week. Clara left him 2 months ago. He didn't tell me that directly. He mentioned it offhand, like it was just another piece of bad news. She found someone with more money. Someone who could take her to the right restaurants and buy her the right gifts. He said he didn't blame her. He said she was always like that. He had just been too infatuated to see it. He told me his parents had stopped asking about his career. They just asked if he was eating enough and sleeping enough. His mother still made sweet and sour pork ribs. He ate them alone most nights. I asked him if he ever thought about the past. He said, all the time. He said he thought about the letter I had taken. He thought about the anonymous note I had written. He had figured out it was me. He told me he had kept it. The crumpled one I wrote. He had pulled it out of the trash that night and kept it in his wallet for years. He said he didn't know why. Maybe because it was the only honest thing anyone had said to him. I told him I was sorry. Not for taking the letter. I wasn't sorry for that. I was sorry for how things had turned out. He nodded. He understood the difference. He walked me to the edge of the exhibit hall. He said, you were always the one who knew where you were going. I never had that. I just wanted to be loved. I told him everyone wants to be loved. He said, yeah, but some people build their lives around something else. Something that doesn't leave. I thought about my research. About my advisors and my lab mates and the years of work I had poured into my career. I thought about how it had never once betrayed me. I said, you could still build something. He looked at the stack of brochures in his hand. Maybe, he said, but I don't know where to start anymore. A few years passed. I finished my MD-PhD and accepted a tenure-track position at a university. I was teaching advanced immunology and running my own lab. The work was challenging. The hours were long. But I loved it. One afternoon, I got an email from Maya. She said she had heard through mutual friends that Zach had moved back to our hometown. He had taken a job as a lab technician at the local community college. Not a researcher. Just a technician. He was running basic experiments for undergraduate classes and calibrating equipment. The pay was modest. The work was simple. But he was doing science again. Even if it was the most basic kind. Maya said his parents had told her mother that he was quieter now. He didn't talk about the past. He didn't talk about Clara. He just worked and came home and helped his father in the garden. His mother said it was like watching a bird relearn how to fly after clipping its own wings. Slow and uncertain. But moving forward. I sat with that image for a long time. A bird relearning how to fly. I imagined him in a small lab with white walls and humming equipment. I imagined him measuring solutions and calibrating instruments. I imagined him finding peace in the quiet rhythm of routine. Maybe that was enough. Maybe after everything he had lost, he had found something worth keeping. A few months later, I traveled to my hometown for a brief visit. My parents were getting older, and I wanted to see them. On the afternoon of my second day, I walked past the community college campus. I wasn't planning to go in. I just wanted to see the old streets and the trees that had grown taller since I left. But as I passed the science building, I saw a figure through the ground floor window. It was Zach. He was wearing a white lab coat. He was adjusting a microscope with careful, deliberate movements. His face was calm. His eyes were focused. He looked like he had found something. Not glory or greatness or any of the things he had once reached for. Just a small, steady rhythm. A way to keep his hands busy and his mind quiet. I didn't go inside. I didn't call out his name. I just stood there for a moment, watching him work. Then I turned around and walked away. That night, I wrote him a letter. I didn't know if he would read it or throw it away or keep it in his wallet for another decade. But I wrote it anyway. Dear Zach, I saw you today through the window of the science building. You looked focused and calm, and I was glad to see it. I know we don't talk anymore. I know we stopped being part of each other's lives a long time ago, but I wanted you to know that I don't blame you for any of it anymore. I used to be angry. Angry at you for choosing Clara. Angry at myself for not being able to stop you. Angry at the whole situation for being so unfair. But I'm not angry now. I think we all make choices, and we all have to live with them. You made yours, and I made mine. And somehow, we both ended up okay. Not perfect. Not brilliant. Just okay. And maybe that's enough. I hope you're taking care of yourself. I hope you eat well and sleep enough and find small moments of peace. I hope you know that the girl who used to race you to solve biology problems still remembers you fondly. Not as the boy who made a mistake, but as the boy who was brave enough to chase something, even if it was the wrong thing. Take care, Zach. Elena. I sealed the envelope and addressed it to the community college. I dropped it in the mailbox on my way to the airport. I didn't know if he would respond. I didn't need him to. I had said what I needed to say. On the flight back north, I thought about the two of us. How we had started in the same place and ended up in completely different worlds. How we had both loved and lost and found our way back to something like peace. I didn't know if he would ever be happy. I didn't know if he would ever find the kind of success he had once dreamed of. But I knew he was still trying. And that was more than I could have said a few years ago. I leaned my head against the window and watched the clouds pass below. The sky was wide and blue and full of light. It felt like a beginning. Not the beginning of something grand or dramatic, just the beginning of a new ordinary day. And that was enough. A few weeks later, I received a reply. It was a postcard with a photo of the old campus on the front. The message on the back was short and written in familiar handwriting. Elena, I got your letter. I read it 3 times. I don't know what to say except thank you. Thank you for remembering me the way you do. Thank you for not giving up on me, even after everything. I am okay. Not great, but okay. I'm working in the lab, and it's quiet and simple, and I think I needed that. I think I needed to stop trying to be someone I wasn't. My parents are doing well. My mother still makes sweet and sour pork ribs. She asked about you the other day. She said you were always her favorite. I told her you were doing important work, and she smiled. That's all I wanted to say, really. Just thank you, and I'm okay. Zach. I read the postcard twice. Then I placed it on my desk next to my computer. It wasn't a grand gesture or a dramatic reconciliation. It was just 2 people who had hurt each other and then grown up enough to let go of the hurt. It was enough. A few years later, I was giving a guest lecture at a regional medical conference. The audience was filled with young researchers and established scientists. After the lecture, a young woman approached me. She was bright and eager and full of questions about my research. As we talked, she mentioned that she had studied at the community college in my hometown. She said one of the lab technicians there had recommended my paper to her. He had told her that if she wanted to understand how the immune system worked, she should read my work. She said he spoke about it with such quiet pride. I smiled. I knew who she was talking about. I told her to thank him for me. She promised she would. And I knew she would keep that promise. Because people like her always do. They carry small kindnesses forward. They remember the people who believed in them. They grow up to become the kind of people who help others believe in themselves. That night, I sat in my hotel room looking out at the city lights. I thought about Zach, and the boy he used to be, and the man he had become. I thought about the choices we had made, and the roads we had taken. I thought about how we had both found our way to peace, even if it looked different for each of us. I had built a career and a reputation and a life I was proud of. He had built a quiet existence in a small lab with simple work and steady hours. We had both found something worth holding on to. And maybe that was the real victory. Not the grand gesture. Not the dramatic ending. Just the quiet act of surviving and growing and learning to let go. I closed my eyes and let the city lights blur into soft shapes. I had come a long way from the girl who took a letter and the boy who never forgave her. We had both come a long way. And for the first time in a long time, I was okay with that. This story taught me so much about choices, consequences, and what true happiness really means. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What would you do if you had a second chance to undo a decision you made for someone else? Tell me what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. I'll see you in the next one.